Okay, so we're going to start off with talking about the basic way to open up a document, learn about the features of what your choices are, and then how to proceed from there. So once you have Photoshop CC open, remember that's called Photoshop Creative Cloud, we're going to go to File and New to open up a blank document. So up at the top we have an option to type in a name. You can always save it as something else later. I'm just going to call mine test file. Underneath that we have a whole bunch of presets, which is very helpful for us as photographers. So it will set up everything that we really need to go through our projects. So notice that you have a whole bunch of different options. You have a default Photoshop size, you have a US paper, international paper, photo. You can even make documents designed to be hosted on the web, mobile and devices, or film and video. For our purposes, we will always choose photo. Notice you now get a whole bunch of different options such as landscape 2x3. If you click on that option, you'll get 4x6s, 8x10s, and you also get the portrait version, the vertical version of a document. So let's start with an 8x10 landscape. Notice that the width here says 10 and you have a choice of inches, pixels, centimeters, millimeters, points, picas, and columns. For our purposes, we will always work in inches. Pixels would be something that if you were working on the web would be a little bit easier to work with because of its file size. It needs to be a little bit smaller for the web. If we go down here to resolution, notice that it says pixels per inch, and this tells you how many pixels will be in each inch of your document. The higher the number of pixels, the better quality, the better clarity your photograph or your document is going to be. You also can choose pixels per centimeter, but we're going to use pixels per inch. Remember, the size for an internet photograph doesn't need to be any more than 72 pixels per inch. We have color modes here. We have an RGB color mode. We have grayscale if you want something just in black and white. We've got a bitmap option, CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black color. We also have lab color. For right now, let's leave it at RGB, red, green, and blue. Now you can change your background contents if you want to open up a document with a specific color or a transparent background. Say you're making a logo and you want to be able to place it on top of something where it would need to be see-through. You could choose that as well. Let's leave white for now. Okay, let's go ahead and click OK, and here we have our document. Anything in the white area is going to be where you are going to work. When you print it, everything in that white space is going to print. Everything outside of that is just the space to kind of frame around the edge. Anything that's outside of the white will not be printed. So this is your canvas area. Now let's just talk a little bit about the interface of Photoshop CC. Notice that you have your file name right up here. We also have our toolbar over here on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, we have some color swatches, which is hosted in something called a palette. And over here on the right-hand side is what we call your palette dock. So this is where all of your palettes will be docked when you need them. You can find palettes of swatches, of mixing colors. There are adjustment panels, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. We have your layers palette, which is incredibly important. We also have your history palette, which allows you to move back and forth between clicks in your document to easily jump back 20 clicks if you need to. We also have a character palette, allows you to work with your type. And we also have a paragraph palette that also helps you navigate and align all of your type. So let's take a look at your layers palette over here. Notice that every document starts off with a background layer. So every document has at least one layer. And notice it's locked, which means you cannot do a lot to change that background layer. You can't put anything underneath it. You can't hide anything underneath it. So what we can do is let's take a look at the layers palette a little bit more. Let's take a look at here down at the bottom. You'll notice that you have a bunch of different options. You have one option here, and this says create a new layer. So when you are ready to either draw or build something, you can hit your create a new layer button. Notice that it pops up with these transparent boxes here. This tells you that you can see through this layer to whatever is underneath. It will automatically title it layer 1 or layer 2 depending on how many layers you've already made. To rename it, you can double click. I'm going to title this test layer. And you can rename them. You can also change them colors if you would like to organize yourself a little bit more. If you need to, you can trash it. If you need to delete it, you can hit this button and delete it. It'll ask you to delete. You can also, I'm just going to make another one. You can also take that layer and drag it to the trash can. You can also, once you have a layer, hit the delete key on your keyboard to make it go away as well. Now if we take a look back at our history palette, notice that every time I've clicked there is a different state. So each one of these rectangles, each one of the parts of the list are considered a state. And if I want to go back to the name change of the first layer we made, I can click up that far and then it will return the document to its former state, which is really nice, and you can go back well over 1,000 clicks if necessary, which will be helpful at some point. So over here, let's take a look on the left-hand side. Here we have what we call the Move tool. It allows you to move everything in Photoshop. We have some other tools you may recognize, such as the Crop tool. We have a Brush tool, an eraser, a paint bucket, although initially it very well may look like a gradient tool. We have a Type tool, which helps you with text. Down here at the bottom we have our color swatches, our foreground and background colors. This allows you to choose any color that you could possibly want by simply clicking on the box, and you get a color picker menu. And you can choose any color of the rainbow by sliding in the rainbow bar over here, and you can click inside the large gradient box that gives you all of the tints and the shades of a color, and it will show you the new color you're changing it to and the one that it is currently. When you click OK, it will change to that color, and that will be the color that you are using in that particular moment. So this is a pretty simple introduction to how to use the interface of Photoshop. Do play around with it, and more tutorials to come.